Hello, my name is Michael with the Clearview Library District, and welcome to an online edition of The Works. The Works is for kids ages 6 to 12 who like to tinker, build, get messy, and explore. And it's a way for you to engage in science, technology, engineering, art, and math, or STEAM. So each week I'll have a new project for you to try at home, and I'll be focusing on a different part of STEAM learning every week. This week we will be working with technology and we will be making a video game from scratch. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we will get started. Okay, so we'll be using a website called Scratch from MIT. It's free to use. You will need to create a free account to log in and save your project though. So the URL is scratch.mit.edu, or if you just Google search Scratch, it should be the top result. So once you create an account and log in, this is the page that you log into. And what we'll do today is follow along a game tutorial and create an actual video game. So what you want to do is click on Ideas. And we're going to scroll down to these activity guides. The one we'll be using today is called Pong, the Pong game. So we're going to make a bouncing ball game with sounds, points, and other effects. So go ahead and click on Pong game, and then click on Try the Tutorial. Perfect. Okay, so it's going to have a little tutorial down here, this window with the teal, and we're going to click through step by step, and you can just follow along. Now to get started, you'll want to hit the play button. You'll probably want to put me on pause, hit that play button to watch the intro. So assuming you did that, let's go ahead and click the right button on the tutorial window and we'll get started. So the first thing we want to do is add a backdrop. So in the lower right-hand corner of Scratch, we have a button here that says choose a backdrop. So we want to click on that. And we clicked on add a backdrop, and there are a ton of backdrops to choose. We're going to use the neon tunnel like they're using in the tutorial. So we click on neon tunnel. Now we see in the top right corner that we have Scratch the cat and our backdrop. You could click on Scratch and drag them around, but that's all that happens so far. So let's go ahead and click on the right arrow. Now we want to add a ball sprite. So right now, in the lower right area, we have this blank white space where we have Scratch the cat, and that is our sprite. A sprite is what we are calling basically the characters in your game, or the items in the game are all going to be sprites. So we have Scratch. We actually want to add a ball instead of Scratch. So what we can do is click on the trash can on the Scratch sprite icon to delete him. And we're going to click on this button in the lower right that says choose a sprite. And let's go ahead and choose the ball sprite like the tutorial says. So now we have a ball with the tunnel background. Let's go ahead and click on the right arrow. So now we're going to teach the ball basically how to bounce around the screen. Now with most games in Scratch, you have to tell the game when to begin. So above the game area in the top right where we have the backdrop and the sprite, you see this little green flag icon. And so we're going to make sure that when you click the green flag, that the game will start. So that is going to be an event. So on the left side of Scratch, you have these different colored circles, which is all of our different types of code that we'll be using. So we're going to click on events, and this will give us our orange code, which are different types of events. So we're going to choose when green flag is clicked. So what you're going to do is just click on that icon and drag it over to our workspace here, which is this big white area in the middle of the screen. So when the green flag is clicked, we want the ball to point in a direction. So we are going to go to motion. So our motion part of code is the top one, the blue one here. We're going to find that one that says point in direction. So here it is. We're going to click on it and drag it over, and it should snap right underneath the green flag piece of code. So instead of 90 degrees, we want it to be 45 degrees. So you can click on the 90 and actually type it in, or you could drag the arrow around to tell you how many degrees you want the ball to point in. Then we want it to move in whatever direction it's pointing in. So you'll see in the tutorial window, it has a forever block. So forever is going to be in the control type of code. So it's going to be the orange on the left side. And we're going to drag and drop the one that says forever on it, and drag it and snap it right underneath the point in direction. So whatever we put inside this forever will happen until the game ends. So what we want it to do is move. So it's going to point in a direction first, and then we want it to move, and if it hits the edge of the game board, we want it to bounce. So those are motion pieces of code again. So we're going to go back up to the motion, the blue circle type of code. We're going to choose move, and we're going to snap it inside the forever block. And then the one that says if on edge, bounce. And we're going to drag it also inside the forever box underneath the move. And we're going to follow the tutorial, and instead of 10 steps, that's by default in there. We're going to click in there and type in 15. Okay. So let's go ahead and just test that out by clicking the green arrow, the green flag, and see what happens. Perfect. So we see that once we click the green flag, the ball is pointing 45 degrees in another direction and moving until it hits the edge and then bouncing. And it's going to do that forever until we say stop. Let's go ahead and click the right arrow on the tutorial window. Now we're going to add a paddle. So if you're familiar with Pong, it uses a ball and a paddle. So now we're going to add another sprite. So to do that, we're going to click on choose a sprite, and they're alphabetical. So we're going to scroll down to paddle. Right here, there's green paddle. So now we have two sprites, the ball and the paddle. And we will click on the right arrow on the tutorial window. So you'll notice that there's nothing in our work plan here under paddle. That's because each sprite has different segments of code. And right now paddle is selected, and we haven't made any code for the paddle sprite yet. If we click on ball, we'll see the code that we made for the ball, but the paddle is going to have, it's going to move differently. So it's going to have different code. So we're going to choose paddle. And again, we're going to make sure that we can start moving the paddle as soon as the game starts, which means as soon as the green flag is clicked. So that is an event. We're going to go to the events part of our code. Once again, we're going to choose when the green flag is clicked and drag it to our workspace here. And again, we want the forever loop because we want to be able to control the paddle forever until the game ends. So we'll click control, we'll choose the forever block, drag it and snap it underneath. Now we're going to choose set X to mouse X. So X is our left and right, Y is up and down. So we're going to control where we want the paddle to be with where we move our mouse left and right in the game. So that's going to be a motion. So again, the blue, the motion part of our code, we're going to find the one that says set X to. We're going to drag it into our forever block. And we want to put it in a specific position. So we can choose, let's see, let's find it here. So you'll see that the mouse X in the tutorial is a slightly lighter blue, and that is our sense part of our code. So that's the part where the game will sense your input. So I clicked on sensing, which is the light blue code on the left side, and we're going to choose the one that says mouse X. And you're going to drag that and put that where the 3 is in the set X to. So it's going to set X to wherever the mouse is on the X plane. So let's go ahead and test that. We're going to hit the green flag. Perfect. So now if you drag your mouse left and right, it's going to move left and right. If you move your mouse up and down, it's not going to follow it exactly because we didn't tell our code to follow Y coordinates, which is up and down, just X coordinates, which is left and right. Perfect. So let's go ahead and hit the stop sign. And we will hit the right arrow on our tutorial. So now we're going to select the ball sprite. So go ahead and click on the ball sprite in the window. And we will hit the right arrow on the tutorial. Now we're going to add the code to make the ball bounce off of the paddle. So once again, we are going to make it start when the game starts, which means when the green flag is clicked. So that is back to events. And then we're going to choose a second when flag is clicked for our ball sprite. And again, we want a forever loop. So back to control. And we'll snap that forever loop into place. And we want an if-then statement. So again, we are in control. Underneath the forever block is an if blank then box. So we're going to snap that inside the forever loop. And this will make more sense in a second once we fill this out. So now we want a couple things. We want some motion and we want some sensing. Let's start with motion. So the first thing we're going to do is have it turn. When the ball hits the paddle, we want it to turn and then move in another direction. So that's in motion. So we're going to click on the motion blocks of code, and we're going to choose the turn degrees, and we're going to snap that inside the if then block. And we're going to follow the tutorial, and instead of turning 15 degrees, we want the ball to basically turn right back around and head in the opposite direction, which would be 180 degrees. Then we want it to continue to move. So we're going to stay in the motion blocks of code. We're going to grab the move 10 steps and drag it underneath the turn 180 degrees and snap it. And follow the tutorial to click on the 10, change it to 15, and hit enter. Then we want it to also wait half a second so the game is a little more manageable. And so that is going to be control. And here it is, wait 1 second. So we're going to drag that under our move 15 steps. We're going to click on the 1 and do 0.5 instead of 1 second. Hit enter. Now we want to go to our sensing block of code. And this is where we'll actually code in how the ball will interact with the green paddle and notice that it's touching it, and then it will do all the other steps we already told it to do. So we're going to find the one that says touching. And right now it says touching mouse pointer. We're going to change that. So we're going to go ahead and drag that touching in, and you can put it right in that blank that says if blank then. And you'll see there's a drop-down box next to mouse pointer, and it's going to notice that we have another sprite called paddle. So we're going to choose paddle. So right now, what we have, when the green flag is clicked, the ball is going to point in a direction, move 15 steps forever. If it hits the edge, it's going to bounce. We also have, under the ball sprite code, forever if the ball is touching the paddle, the ball is going to turn around 180 degrees, move in the other direction, and wait for half a second. So let's just go ahead and hit the green flag and see where we're at. Okay, so now it's bouncing. Let's try and catch. There we go. So the ball is hitting the paddle. It's turning right back around, going 180 degrees in the other direction, still moving. Perfect. That's what we want. We will go ahead and hit the red stop sign. Now we'll hit the right arrow on our tutorial window. Now we're going to have it start adding a score. So we're going to create a brand new variable here. So on the left side, we're going to go to variables. Now a variable is where you're going to have it add up points and do a bunch of other fun stuff. And we're going to make a custom variable that we're going to call score. So it's going to keep track of how many times the ball hits the paddle. So let's click on make a variable. And under this new variable name, we'll just type the word score. And we're going to choose, leave it on for all sprites, and hit OK. Okay, so now we have a variable called score. And we're going to hit the right arrow on the tutorial. And we're going to choose change my variable by 1. You see it over here under variables, and we're going to change that to score. And change score by 1. Hit the right arrow. Now we're going to insert that into our existing code, and that's going to go underneath our sensing code, which is the touching paddle. So we're going to drag the code that says change score by 1. We're going to nest it in that if-then statement. So now it's going to have a score that's going to change by 1. It's going to add 1 point every time the ball touches the paddle. And you can see already the variable shows up in the game window as score, and it says 0. So let's test that again. Now with code, it's always good to test every step as you go, because if you change a bunch of things at once and the code doesn't work or the game doesn't work like you want it to, it's hard to figure out which thing you changed to make it not work. So you kind of want to add one thing at a time, test it, make sure it's working properly, and then add the next new thing. So let's test it, hit the green flag to go, and let's see if it's going to start counting. Perfect. So now we see every time the ball hits the paddle, our score is going up by 1. Perfect. We'll hit the red stop sign. Now click on the right arrow for the tutorial, and we're going to have it reset the score. So now if I start the game again, we haven't told it yet to reset the score for a new game back to 0. So every time we stop and restart, it's just going to keep the points from the previous game. We don't want that. So we're also going to add another event, which is when a green flag is clicked. And it doesn't really matter where in the white workspace you put it, but we're going to just drag it over here, and we're going to set the score to 0. So that is under variables. And you're going to do set my variable to 0. We're going to drag that underneath and click the drop down to change my variable to score. So now every time we start a new game, it's going to set the score to 0. So we're going to start a new game, and yes, it did set it to 0, and we are happy. So we'll stop the game and click the right arrow. So now we're going to add a line sprite, which is going to be if the ball touches the line, then the game ends. So we're going to add another sprite. So in the bottom right, you're going to click the Choose a Sprite button. And we're going to scroll down through our alphabetical list to line. There it is. Now we have a line sprite. So what we want to do is drag it to the bottom of our game. So the idea is if the ball hits the line, then the game is over. So go ahead and hit the right arrow on the tutorial. And we're going to add some more code here. So we're going to add code that tells the game to stop if the ball hits the red line. So like all of our other pieces of code in the sprites, we have to start when the game starts, which is when we click the green flag, which is under events. And then when green flag is clicked, so we'll drag that into our workspace. Then we need another forever loop. So that is in control. We'll drag forever and nest it right there. And then an if then, just like before, we're going to nest it inside the forever loop. And we have to tell the game to stop. So again, under control, we have a piece of code that says stop all, which means just stop the game. So we're going to put that in our if then nest of code. Now we want the sensing part, which is that light blue. And we're going to say when it's touching, you're going to click and drag that into the if then blank. We're going to choose the drop down arrow and choose ball. So what this is saying, when the green flag is clicked forever until the game ends, if the ball is touching the line, we're going to stop everything, and that means the game ends. So let's go ahead and choose, let's go ahead and test that. So we're going to hit our green flag, make sure it's counting up still, yes, and I'm going to intentionally let the ball hit the red line, and let's see what happens. Yep, perfect. So the game stopped. We can't move the paddle anymore. The ball stopped, the score stopped, and that's exactly what we want. And we will leave it there for today. So let's go ahead and just play it for another second and hit the green flag. And this is a great game to test if you have friends, neighbors, brothers and sisters, if you want to try and see who can get the top score. It's a perfect game. Now what I would do is try it at this speed and then see how you can change the game to make it more difficult. A quick way I can think of would be to make the ball go faster. So if you want to do that and change the game, you'd click on the ball sprite and you would have it move maybe 30 steps instead of 15 steps. So you can begin to change the game, and maybe you want to add a second ball that acts the same as the first ball. So you can add another sprite that's a ball. So you can change the game in a lot of ways and make it way more difficult and then see who can get the highest score. So thank you for joining me today on The Works, and I will see you next time.